One, and we are recording with the one and only Mr. Jeffrey Prather, who I think to date you've probably made me laugh harder than ever on a show we did where we were just kind of whatever, just yelling about this, that, and the other thing. And you just said it so nonchalantly. You go, yeah, and then the metrosexual coasts. And something about that is still one of my favorite terms I've ever heard in 1,080 episodes. It's still,
Oh, wow.
I always think of that. It might have been Ed Morales. You were just going on and on. You go, yeah, and the metrosexual coast. I laughed so hard thinking
After the
about.
metrosexual coasts fall, yes.
Yeah, something like
Every
it's just,
Indian cowboy, friar, redneck, hillbilly,
the term is
motorcycle
just
guy.
so great.
Yeah,
The metrosexual
yeah.
coast. But for anybody that's listening who doesn't know you, I can't imagine how they wouldn't know you, as your show and your following is oodles larger than mine. But I guess for any of my audience that doesn't know you, Mr. Prather, could you please give everyone an introduction to yourself?
Uh, I'm a retired special operations soldier, served in PSYOP, 7 Special Forces, ex-DEA special agent, and snowcat special operator, a whistleblower, fired 19 years on the job. And I was also a Defense Intelligence Agency officer as well. So turned whistleblower and started doing all this, and chaplain, father, teacher, martial arts master, been doing martial arts since 1967, had a dojo for 33 years now. Uh, Firearms instructor, used to publish a lot in SWAT and all the magazines, and um, taught literally tens of thousands of military units, sometimes units as large as 600 in close quarter combatives at Camp Shelby. Um, so that's kind of my story.
Yeah, so total badass. And I'm here in slippers. So as you can imagine, I might value Mr. Prather's take on the Chinese spy balloon more than mine, as I've got my cozy little blanket, and he just told you how much of a badass he is. So with that, Mr. Prather, so it just I'm always hesitant when something happens and there's such this immediate dichotomy, left, right. The right's, Biden's senile. The left's, it's just a balloon. The conspiracy is the CIA hijacked it, or whatever. The balloon doesn't exist, or this happens all the time, or this is no less of a threat than Sputnik, or what? What is it? Maybe my brain has just been cooked by the last 3 years of COVID bullshit. But I just don't accept anything at face value anymore. And that just might be my own descent into madness. Who knows? But your
Oh,
thoughts
that's
on all
good.
of this?
Well, the first thing I'd say is Biden isn't senile. First of all, there's lots of different doubles.
Yeah.
But all that, I say that all that's an act. That's an act. So that you'll talk about that as opposed to really what's going on.
Yeah,
Because
probably.
one time he's falling down Air Force One steps, and the other time he's walking backwards while talking to the reporters. So
Yeah.
those two things don't make sense at all.
Yeah.
So I think that is all an act as an excuse for the engineered evil.
Yeah.
But for the balloon, I don't think that the Chinese informed America that they were going to do the balloon, simply because when you're running intelligence operation, collection operations, you don't tell the enemy about it. And I don't think that the corrupted military and DOJ would want to know about it anyway. They like deniability. But the first thing that has come out, so I don't think this was a planned. I think it was a collection effort, and so you got to understand the collection efforts that are going on. So we're in what I call a 5th-generation warfare, which is biodigital and high on information influence operation psyops and low on kinetics. There's some kinetics, there's killing, but there's not a lot of that. And 3rd-generation stuff is irrelevant except when it's Putin and Russia coming after Ukraine. So the biodigital is the phones that everybody carries, which is why you should have a Faraday bag, which is why I sell a ton of Faraday bags. But it's also the jab, the non-shot vaccine jab, and the boosters, which are the updates of the operating system. So it's right next to you in your phone. It's inside you with the jab and boosters. Then it's in the smart street lamps and thermometers and light bulbs. Then if they really want to look at something, it's in the planes over the Arizona audit or Uvalde which is in my day what we were doing in Tier 1 Special Operations Intelligence stuff there, SIGINT, MASSINT stuff through, I don't know if you know Blackfin or Stingray, but
I've heard Stingray, yeah.
Those devices of that. And then beyond that, it gets into satellite. But in between there's this space, there's a kind of a dead space, and the balloons fill that dead space. And so on the border, Customs and Border Protection have blimps up there to what they used to watch illegals. Now they're facilitating illegals. But that area space, they want total global surveillance from internally to externally. And so I say the war is inside us and above us. And so that's what they're trying to fill in with this. But I don't think the Chinese told us, and I think they probably got it from us, just like they got the jab originally, the bioweapon from Dietrich to Harvard, to Canada, to Wuhan, to the military games, because a couple of years back, or no, last year, DOD had balloons over several states collecting data on Americans. So, we're usually leading all this. We trained the Zetas, we trained everybody that turns against us, we trained and armed, sometimes accidentally, sometimes purposefully. But the real takeaway here is I don't think that the Chinese told them that they were going to do this, but now we find out that the DOD had already run balloons against us, and we find out that, well, there's a debate here, but I don't think there's any debate that they said, well, there were Chinese balloons that came out under Trump, and Trump goes, well, I didn't know about them. And then the DNI, and I used to stand outside the DNI's office on a regular basis, said, well, I didn't know about him. And then we hear that Mattis says, well, we knew about him, but we decided not to tell Trump because he was too provocative. That's from Mad Dog Mattis, who's really not, that's not the way he really is. He's actually a very careful thinker, but he, like Miley, are traitors. They were not loyal to their commander in chief. They were not loyal to the Constitution. They were, however, loyal to the deep state, which is part of the global cabal, which is controlling this international military elite. Because generals, most generals, people, and I know generals. I mean, I know General Flynn, and people like, oh, General Flynn, like, well, generals are politicians for them. There's a couple really outstanding generals, but most of them are just politicians. There's only a few of them that are really, grants, or Pattons, and generally they're not liked in peacetime. In peacetime you want a paper pusher. Yeah. In wartime you want, a hard drinking, hard fighting guy like Grant or Patton. Assholes basically.
Yeah.
So if they're competent assholes in wartime, they're great, but if they're incompetent assholes in peacetime, then you got really, no use for them. Yeah. So I think that the balloon is an inflection point, showing the dominance of the global cabal in league with China, but it was turned against them. And I think that's real important because the military is losing its credibility, and the American people, don't believe in the Congress. They don't believe in the government. They did believe in Trump. That's kind of debatable now, but they have since Vietnam really appreciated us veterans, and now while they still should appreciate the veterans, the chain of command, the generals are what we've always known generals to be, is either pretty political or incompetent or even corrupt, because the military industrial complex has morphed into the biodigital intelligence complex. So, and we see that because we see an Air Force, and I just had on my show, I got a special bottle of Horse Soldier bourbon here, signed by, have you had Sergeant Major Vince McKellar on your show yet?
No, I have not.
No, You haven't.
I know.
So Vince McKellen, you have?
No, I have not.
You
No,
have
no,
not.
you've one up me.
So he's the one. He's one of the comm sergeants on ODA 595, the Green Beret horse soldiers that went in. And my wife is like, "You're a little starstruck." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm a little starstruck because you know they changed complete doctrine and won the war, the first Afghanistan war, within weeks. But then big army and big everything and big SEALs and big Navy come in, and then it morphs into Iraq, and then we lose it on purpose, you know. And then we see the most ridiculous, but it confirms what I say all the time: is an F-22 Air Force pilot, and the Air Force guys would not go low enough to support ODA 595 on the ground. The Marines and naval aviators would, but the Air Force guys wouldn't. An F-22 Air Force guy uses a Sidewinder missile to shoot down a balloon and then goes, "Take kill." I haven't heard the jokes yet, but I know I will, and they are coming. That is pathetic, and that is
that's one.
shameful.
That's
and that it just shows how irrelevant kinetic war weaponry is in fifth generational conflict.
It really is.
That just elevated the Chinese PSYOPs, but it also showed our vulnerabilities. So it's a really good inflection point. And the reason that's so important is the enemy learns after every engagement, and the enemy has learned in fifth generation PSYOPs that you don't want to have inflection points. So the Alamo was an inflection point because Houston goes, "Remember the Alamo." 300 Thermopylae was an inflection point because everybody remembers the gallant sacrifice of the 300. And then Day of Infamy and the burning videos of the Arizona are inflection points. The planes flying into buildings are inflection points. So the enemy goes, "No more inflection points. We're still not sure if COVID was manufactured." Fern cleavage, clearly, it's been, we're sure. And then all the kinetic kills that are happening, they never really identify them. They never really follow up on them. There's no investigation. On my show, I showed that the clip of the Ramos going to Uvalde school was everywhere. But the seconds right before that, where there were two guys standing there watching him with an Army plane that had just flown in, which to me is a signature of Special Operations Intelligence, of controlling him, there's no inflection point. And then the lesson there was, hey, a bunch of guys with guns can't stop one guy with a gun, so we don't need to have guys with guns. But the balloon has become an inadvertent inflection point. And that's important that we exploit that to wake more people up. So that's a long-winded explanation of what I think of the balloon.
No, that was brilliant. I had never, yeah, it's right. That's like the argument behind, like Bin Laden, like, oh, we threw him in the ocean, so there's no shrine or holy site. And then there are people that say that it didn't happen. But regardless, it's the idea of the inflection point. And on the note about the F-22, yeah, I watched the video of it yesterday, and the same thing. I was just watching it, and I was just like, this is so pathetic. The person filming it is just like cheering, and I'm like, it's a plane shooting a Sidewinder at or whatever at a balloon, and I'm just like, this is like seeing somebody wearing. You ever seen that picture of a fat guy wearing VR goggles, smoking a cigarette, sitting at a booth in McDonald's, and you're just like, what the fuck? Like, that's the imagery of an F-22 shooting. But it's also a brilliant point of what you said, aside from just being depressing, is what a showcase of how warfare has evolved and left behind. Not totally, but kinetics.
So again, the Chinese, the only thing that's special about the Chinese is they realized they weren't going to make the same mistake as the Nazis and Japanese, and like, nobody can take the American warrior head on. Nobody. If we are at our peak, nobody can beat us because of our love for life and freedom. The world has never seen our equal, period, in any regard, because we love life and freedom so much, because we'll give the country back. There's the I forget his name, but there's the the World War II pilot who's hanging from his parachute, and the Zero comes in to strafe him. He pulls out his 45 and shoots the Japanese pilot in the between the eyes. I mean, they recovered him later. It's a true story. You know,
Really?
that's oh yeah, yeah,
sh-
yeah. You can look it up. I can't think of the guy's
Sure.
name right now, but he's like never out of the fight. That is the American fighting spirit that will return. It's just not going to return through the military because all of us, we're not going to have our kids join this corrupted bunch of pedos.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're
And the
still warriors.
metrosexual coasts.
We're just not gonna. We're just not gonna do this.
Yeah.
And then they get the trannies and the metros and then who wins that fight? The parent. And so that I got a new T-shirt. You're gonna cup out who win. It's a war between parents and pedos. Who do you think is gonna win that fight?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. A bunch of trannies with myocarditis. Like, yeah, man, I ain't betting on them. Like, yeah. I don't know. So if it wasn't meant to be an inflection point, if that wasn't, oh, this is actually I forgot about this. I wanted to ask you this about because I read that this morning. General Mattis not telling Trump because he is quote too provocative. Is that the definition? And I'm not even trying to be like sly. Like, is that treasonous, or is this just am I still, am I a child and haven't realized that, the rules are different at the higher levels? It's blurred. I mean, is it something where like, yeah, like civilians die? Like if you went to Eisenhower and was like, oh, we're killing civilians in Germany, he'd be like, yeah, it's war. Like, is this something that is kind of like grow up? Like, no, it is more of a
no. I
okay,
don't think Eisenhower would. I don't think Eisenhower would have killed civilians purposefully.
sure,
If you've ever seen Ike, there's a great movie called Ike Countdown to D-Day. Tom Selleck plays him, and they go, "Hey, there's going to be 7 out of 10 casualties. 75% of the paratroopers are going to be casualties." And he goes, "Up, we got to send them. I got it." And then he goes down and meets the 101 guys to say, "Oh man, I'll." So yeah, you got it. There's things worth dying for, and there's things worth killing for. But I don't think Eisenhower would ever do that purposefully. So Mattis, and I remember a couple of years back where I was talking with some of my former warrior school instructors, all veterans, Rangers, Ranger Battalion Rangers, and they were all for Mattis. And I'm like, Mattis is saying, stay in Afghanistan. Do you know your history? Again, ODA 595 and triple nickel 555 won that thing in weeks. Okay, now let's get out. Nobody wins Afghanistan. You can't hold the terrain. The human terrain is defined by the physical terrain, and those are hillbillies on steroids. You're never going to. They are Irish, Scottish, Highlanders on steroids. You're never ever going to hold that. The British couldn't hold it. Alexander couldn't. If Alexander couldn't hold it, you ain't gonna hold it. So get in there, kill the bad guys, get out, come back every spring, kill some more bad guys. That's all that needed to happen. But it turned into a military industrial complex. And the new military industrial complex is what I call the biodigital intelligence complex, which is carry the device, ingest the device, have the device everywhere so we can track all your behavior patterns, all the time. And the Chinese are like, well, we want some of that too.
yeah,
and we're trying to do that too. And then beyond that is the global cabal, which doesn't want any nation state borders. So eventually, Schwab will fight with Xi, who will fight with Putin. And all of those guys will fight each other. But there's I don't think there's any naivete there. I just think that America has gotten like Rome became. Rome originally was very strong and tough. They were great soldiers. They were great engineers. And we were like that after World War II. And now life has gotten so easy for us and everybody's so fat and lazy that we are now corrupted like Rome. But we'll win the same way Rome was won. And that goes into the revolutionary strategies of early Christianity is to outlove or outmoral the corrupted republic. That's a whole kind of another discussion, but
Could you flesh that out a little bit?
well, so Yeshua, Aramaic name of Jesus, predicts everything that's going to happen, praises the centurion who says, "Hey, if you say my servant's cured, he's cured." He's a veteran. I always say that in my veterans speeches. But they couldn't be outfought, so they could be outloved. So if you're a Christian, you know the story probably where Yeshua says, "Hey, if someone asks you to go 1 mile, would you go 2?" So that was actually a Roman edict. So if you see the Roman soldiers, they're carrying all their gear on the end of their pilum, just like a hobo would, because you don't have to wait. But when you're walking along, at the end of the day, you got to dig your trenches and put up your stuff. And so you could say, "Hey, citizen, carry my stuff," just like they grab somebody to carry Yeshua's cross for a while. So Yeshua says, if the enemy asks you to carry his stuff for 1 mile, go 2, do more, outlove them. And so as the Roman Republic becomes corrupted over 300 years, as it falls longer than we've been a country, Christianity begins to build. And so, I founded, the chaplaincy. Chaplaincy is based off Capella. Capella is based off of cavalry, because St. Martin de Tours is the first chaplain. He was a Roman cavalryman, but a Christian. He was a Christian because his father was a Roman officer. He said, "Hey, you're going to the Corps?" He goes, "Yes, Dad." But he was playing with slaves kids who were Christian, and they weren't corrupted, fat, nasty, evil kids. And he liked them, and he became a Christian. And so he says, "I'm not going to fight." All early Christians were pacifists. Now, I don't think Yeshua was a pacifist, but that's how they interpreted it. But you can watch Rome begin to be changed by a higher moral standard, which is Christianity. And that comes about with St. Martin de Tours. And then later on, before St. Martin, there's Spartacus, who's a great gladiator, but he loses, and he's all his guys are crucified on the streets of Rome. So kinetics doesn't work, but outloving them did. And then later on, when the Visigoths come to take Rome, then they need the Christians. They need the Christian Roman soldiers. Now, Christianity gets corrupted in the Holy Roman Empire, Catholic Pope, Caesar, all that kind of stuff. But if you're going to do hard things, like I'm sure you've seen Hacksaw Ridge and heard about Desmond Doss, who may be, of us who study courage, he may be the most courageous of all.
Yeah.
Because he goes, "I'm going to go into combat, but I'm not going to use a weapon, and I'm not going to touch a weapon. I'm never going to use a weapon." And he's following Yeshua. He's following as he interprets it, Christian doctrine. Well, does it work? Well, hell yeah, it works unbelievably well. So is it proved out? Well, yeah, it's proved out. So later on, as we are overcome by these barbarians who are coming to kill us, who are coming through the borders, and those are the ones that are going to kill us, not our American troops. American troops are not going to kick doors. It's all these aliens coming through the border that have no connection with us. They're the ones who are killing us and are going to kick doors, while the police do nothing. There's going to need to be a moral, a hardcore group of warrior protectors with a strong moral base, and that is the next evolution of American Judeo-Christian natives that will die and kill to protect.
So not to go all like hallmarky motivational poster, but it's kind of it's like the idea that the caterpillar has absolutely no concept of the butterfly, even as it's wrapping itself up in what appears to be death, but it's birthing something new. And I know that's kind of like cheesy and shitty, but maybe that's what there is to look at, is like, yeah, it's a bunch of pedophiles and they want you to have blood clots, 10 feet long in your veins, and they're pedophiles and they praise Satan and they're raping the border, and destroying the US dollar and, just about everything else. But are
Well,
we becoming something else?
some will have to be sacrificed. And so how this happens with civilians is they take the Christians into the Colosseum, and I've been to the Colosseum, and they start burning them alive and eating them by lions and cutting them. And the Romans start, and so the Romans are like the Japanese. They like blood and sex, and if you can mix them together, even better. And so they're watching these guys and like, wow, these Christians, these guys are hard. They die well, and that starts to change everything. As opposed to infecting the crowd. When you watch something like that, when you're watching a Muslim girl get stoned or something, even if you don't throw a stone, you're being infected because you are part of it. But this is the antiseptic to that. And the more you see, so the modern day Christian martyrs in the Colosseum are the J6ers.
Okay.
And they have a problem with those guys because they're turning into inflection points, even though they're trying to kill them off, and they're doing podcasts from, inside the prison. And I've had Jeremy Brown, my SF friend, on many times, and he's all, he's like, yeah, I ran for office, didn't win, but I have more status in here because I ran for office. So we're laughing about it. And so you can't, that's real power. You can't fight that.
Yeah.
Even if you kill them, even if you lock them up, you can't fight. That's power. That's not force. They're trying to use force. They're trying to pretend they have power by using force. That's not real power. Power is Desmond Doss. Hey, I'm going to go into the worst combat and I'm never going to touch a weapon, and God's going to get me out of this. That is unstoppable.
Yeah. And Desmond Doss.
That's where all this is heading.
Yeah, right. I mean, there are stories of, at the beginning, all the soldiers were like, like, the fuck you aren't picking up, but like they hated him. And then as it developed, they then became viciously protective of him. Like he was the golden boy. They're like, this he's got balls of steel. He's running into machine gun fire and just, no, like it. Yeah, that's a great point. It's been proven. It's not some pie in the sky idea. It's not, not real communism. It's real.
No, it's been proven over and over again. It's just that it's not taught today. So if you just look at the mathematics, Russia 75 to 100 million dead, China 75 to 100 million dead, communist China, Russia 25 to 30 million dead. I mean, it's real clear. But if you look at the World War II totals of Russian deaths next to Nazis, the real number, I think the false number is like 25, but the number I've researched is about 45 million. So the Russians are not going to tolerate Nazis. Everybody remembers in Russia. We don't remember. Nazis. We had Nazis walking around Arizona farms. But the Russians have a whole different memory. So the Russians are in this to win this, and they are not. He's got volunteers coming. Ukraine will never win this. And as all that happens, Russia is getting stronger and stronger. The West is getting weaker, and that means WEF is getting weaker. All of that is happening. But you've seen. I don't know if you've seen Hacksaw Ridge, but I don't know if you've seen Emperor.
No.
Which is Tommy Lee Jones and post-war Japan. So there's a series of movies I tell people to watch if they want to understand this. And the first one is Court Martial of Billy Mitchell, Gary Cooper, where he predicts Pearl Harbor and they court-martial him for it. And they laugh at him because he predicts Pearl Harbor. And then there's Tora Tora Tora, which is Tiger Tiger Tiger, which is 2 films, Japanese-American, shows all the screw-ups, intelligence works, nobody pays attention. Then Midway, the new one, is the best. Then Gallant Hours with James Cagney about Halsey, showing how he walks the ground. And he actually kills Yamamoto with intelligence. Yamamoto and he are trying to kill each other. But he gets on the ground and he actually sends some of his captains out to die. And they go cheerfully. And their whole ships go down with them. But then the last movie is Emperor, where they're in post-war Japan and they're trying to decide whether to charge the emperor, who's a god, a kami. And at the end of the movie, and it's based on real life, they sit down and the emperor, after they shut the door, he shakes hands with the emperor. You're not supposed to touch the emperor. closed order meeting with MacArthur, but his aide is looking through the doors, and then the emperor stands up. Hirohito stands up and says, I want to take all the punishment on me. I don't want Japan to suffer the punishment. I want it to all fall on me. And Tommy Lee Jones playing MacArthur goes, well, thank you. Sit down. This isn't about punishment. I need your help to rebuild Japan. And the emperor is just stunned. Well, this is a Judeo-Christian native ethic based upon moral base that brought him to that we will fight, kill, and die for freedom, and we'll even rebuild countries. That requires a moral base, a moral code. But if you engage in that moral code, you become unstoppable. And so you have a lot of really tough guys on this show, Delta guys, and and I don't know them all, but the ones I've known all have high moral codes.
Oh yeah.
They are just as physically, their spiritual emotional code matches their physical. 100%. The ones I've known. I don't know about the ones I saw something. What's the guy you have on? There's a Delta guy.
Dale Comstock.
Dale. Yeah. And I saw something, I think a show of yours where he was talking about, there was a guy who went through selection and he broke both his legs. They then sent him to a horse doctor, and he took like a year and a half or something to get back, but they waited for that guy because he was the right guy. And I heard that little clip because I don't have time, but I remember I tell a story where I was with 7th Group and I was making a jump in St. Mary Glees and I broke my leg, and I got up and walked away, and I said, but nobody went like, wow, look at the lieutenant, because in that crowd, walking away on a broken leg ain't a big deal. And then I saw that story. Oh, he's got 2 broken legs and he finishes the course. Yeah. Those are what those guys are like.
Yeah.
If you're gonna, that's why we do stuff like that, because I just want to hang out with guys like that. That's because hanging out with guys like that is just exceptional. It's just amazing. And then that makes you want to be like that. And then that's where all that comes from. That's where all this is going to go. Right now it's fat, soft America, but they're all going to be killed and culled. Yeah. But then the remainder, I almost feel sorry for the bad guys. Almost.
Yeah, no, their spiritual and moral fabric is on par with what they can do with a knife. 100%. You talk to those guys, and that's the other thing. Yeah, it's expected. If you broke a leg and got up, it's like that's the base level.
Oh yeah, we would do water jumps. I would never inflate my BCs, because if I can't get out of my parachute and get into the rubber boat without inflating my BCs, it's kind of like I'm panicking. What's the matter with you?
Yeah.
I'd rather drown under my parachute than pull my BCs, because at least when they found it, like, well, at least he didn't pull his BC.
Yeah.
You just don't do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's just, that's very alien to most of America, where they're all, whining about everything. But
I was gonna say, there's also like a detriment. I got to hang out with Dale last summer, and we were shooting machine guns and shit, and a couple other Marine guys. And then there's me, who I'm trying to like keep up with them, and I'm like, well, I'm not gonna stop drinking if they don't stop drinking. And then it ended up with me in the hospital with a concussion, and so people are like, you hung out with Dale, how'd it go? I'm like, it began with an M60 and whiskey, and it ended with me in a hospital room covered in blood. So, not exaggerating. It ended with me in the ER.
No, so, I know that story too. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So it'll no. So I do relate in that sense of like, yeah, it is, but it is the idea of like you work with the material, you become like the material you work with, right? And it's like the quote of, if you lift iron, you become like iron. If you eat ice cream and cookie dough, you're gonna look like ice cream and cookie dough. There is that thing where
iron sharpens iron is the biblical quote. Yeah,
correct. It does raise you to that level when you're around those people that just do everything better. They're not just a Delta operator, but they also just make their bed. You're like, I want to be that. And there is that, and you can't take that away. That is correct. You can't take that away. And I mean, ultimately it is all it's rooted, I do believe in it's rooted in belief in God of not, I mean, I've interviewed Clay Martin a million times at Green Beret, and yeah, he talks about looking back and he's like, why would those guys in Afghanistan fight us when we had near omniscient technology? And he realizes, he's like, because they weren't scared of us. They had a deeper faith in, family and in community and tradition. And it's also, here are the invaders. Yeah, we're probably gonna die, but I'd rather die than submit to the invaders. And he was like, you know what? He's like, I
Yeah.
get it and I respect it. And
Clay's a friend, and I've interviewed him,
I love Clay.
many times. And something he said a while back was, I fought Muslims all my life, but I respect them a lot more than the trannies and metrosexuals. And that's something you find a lot with. My dad was a World War II, is a World War II Pacific War Navy veteran, and he took me to a Japanese karate dojo. And there is a mutual respect, uh, because there is a code there. There's a warrior's code. There's a code of war, and they have totally violated that code in all of this. That's why everybody talks about Nuremberg happening again, although it hasn't. Nuremberg won't happen until boots on the ground kill a whole bunch of bad guys, and then you can have trials later on, which is why I don't like the Nuremberg mock stuff they do. But that is a real important point to come to, and that's what's starting to happen now. Is people are now realizing what the homosexual agenda is about. That was leading to trannyism, which is leading to grooming and pedophilia. And I have had lots of homosexual and lesbian students, and
Sure.
I've got no problem with them. So it's not, so sinning is not evil. Evil is intentional harm. Sinning is missing the mark. And so everybody is a sinner,
Sure.
and I've had lots of, and still do have, black belts who are homosexual. And I've had lots of students and black belts that were homosexual and lesbian. That's not the problem. The problem is where it's moving to intentional harm, which is trannyism and grooming of children. And more people are realizing what that's about. And when you finally see what that is, then you can start to see why, there are times when loving is about killing. So what makes us so great is that we are willing to fight, kill, and die for freedom. And a lot of people emphasize the fight part or the die part, but they don't want to emphasize the kill part. But the kill part, the kinetic part, is a definite part of that.
Sure.
And Clay understands that way better than I do. But it's an important aspect of that. But when you are fighting for your children and for your home, that's very different than fighting for big pharma or fighting for another $1 million or anything like that.
Mm.
That will in the end make all the difference.
When that final inch, it's what's going to push you more. And it's and people that criticize, like my own hatred of indoctrinating kids and grooming them, it has nothing to do with gay and lesbian. One of my best friends is gay. I mean, truly, like, I consider him family. I don't give a shit. I don't think that kid should be indoctrinated with anything sexual. I don't think that you should be having the birds and the bees conversation with a 7-year-old, because it's a 7-year-old. It has nothing to do with LG. I don't care. That's creepy. If it is your agenda to go talk to a child who still has his, first teeth about sex, something's wrong with you. I don't give a shit what kind of sex you're talking about. Something's wrong with you. And I mean, I guess to kind of wrap it up on, man, I mean, was that like Pfizer sponsored demonic Grammy shit the other? I mean, could it be more like, here they
It's
are,
right there.
here they
So
are?
that was the that was real clear.
That was
That was real
that was
clear
a little on the
right there.
nose. I mean, they used to.
Yeah.
I was talking to my buddy last night, and he was like, 20
And
years
Joe
ago.
Biden was there too.
Yeah, I was talking to my buddy last night, and he was like, 20 years ago, it was a little more subtle. You had to like look closely, and you'd be like, yeah, look at that flash, and there's a subliminal message, and maybe the stage is now it's just like covered in blood with like the hands of like the damned reaching up on Satan, and people are like, well, I think it's artistic expression. It's like, dude, there,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
yeah. That's watching the plane coming over Hiroshima and being like, yeah, maybe it's dropping candy. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know, man. Curtis LeMay, I'm imagining that Curtis might be surprised dropping another bomb. Like, all right, man. It's that couldn't be more in your face, but it does serve a purpose. And it's a micro inflection point. It's just another piece in the conscious or the subconscious of the person still on the fence or still not totally awake to what's going on. And that, sometimes you got to get burned.
And the other ones who think it's art, and I have former students who think that is art. They thought the guy with the black guy that was getting sodomized by the devil who had the blood in the
uh,
shoe,
uh,
whatever that was, that was art. I'm like, you
I
have
can't
no
remember.
idea what art is, obviously. But he's passing out from multiple jabs. He's not going to make it. Now his kid was a student of mine, he's a nice kid, but unfortunately that kid probably won't make it either
Yeah,
because he'll end up being sodomized by devil worshippers.
it's
But
that is
again,
what it is.
the herd is being called, and on the one end, folks are being crucibled and sharpened. On the other end, they're being killed off and called. Um, and then to rebuild sincere institutions, not innocent institutions, but sincere institutions, which is all you can expect in a
Mm-hmm.
bureaucracy, and you can't expect any more. You need to have an ethic, and your ethics are founded on your morals. And our traditional morals are Judeo-Christian native, and we will return to that. And then that will eventually, with kinetics, with lots of sacrifice, and with killing, that will win the day. Although I'm not advocating illegal, immoral, unethical, or violent, although that
Yeah,
does
yeah, the whole
even
legal
later
disclaimer.
on.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
It's
I
the end
say
of the
that all the
Pfizer.
time. Yeah,
It's the
because
end of the pharmaceutical commercial. Tommy's
yeah,
podcast. No Jeffrey Prather. Yeah. I get the fucking thing. I'm not. I'm
yeah.
not. I'm not riding at dawn with Dale. Last time I hung out with him, I couldn't even drink with him. I ended up in a hospital. So I don't know. If somebody ever thinks that I'm a reasonable threat, hey, dude. The other guys just want to shoot M60s. I'm like, I want to be one of the cool guys. It's just me bleeding out and Dale being like, "You're not gonna die," and I'm like, "My mom's gonna be so angry if I die." And Dale's like, "Shut the fuck up!" Like, and I'm like, "No, this is it." It's so that's my defense. If someone ever tries me for inciting violence, I'm like, dude, I'm I'm the guy that dies in basic training, right? I'm the guy that gets too fucked up and dies before everyone else goes to basic training. I die in the celebration, and I understand that. My battle space is the podcast. This is my machine gun nest. I'm very aware of what I can deliver and
No,
what I
those guys
cannot.
are. So I went through SOT, which is now Sephallic, and Sephardic, which is the surgical shooting schools skills that all SF goes through now. But I attached to ODA 742. I was never on an ODA. I was on a B team because I was an MI officer, and I always make that clear. But I was a good shooter and I was fast. But when I would PT with the team, I could hang, but I sure wasn't, putting anybody to shame.
Yeah,
I mean, those guys are animals. I could stay with them, but you know, I wasn't like leaving anybody in the dust. I was just, hanging.
yeah.
And the first time I deployed as a PSYOP officer was 7th to Honduras. We set up the FOB all week, and then it was Friday night, and they want to go drinking, and Horan and the battalion commander decided to have a briefing of the Honduran, the La Ceiba cartel, 4th Infantry, boring briefing. And I thought, oh, these tough Green Beret knuckle draggers are going to, freak out and because they want to go drinking. And they sat through that briefing and they were attentive and they were listening because they were building rapport. And I was a PSYOP officer, and I'm like, oh, this is what SF's about. Holy smoke. I want to do this. These guys are
Yeah.
unbelievable. These guys are so cool.
Yeah.
And that's what I learned having Vince on the cast. And I was always struck by how they so appreciated the Mujahideen.
Yeah.
And Vince said, you know, we sat down with Dostrom and his guys, and the first thing he said to us, he broke bread with us, and then he said, hey, we're sorry that our country was used for 9/11. You know, I'd never heard that. I was just like, wow. And I could see why these guys, these Green Berets, did so well with these Mujahideen, combining these forces, because they were just, you know, all in together with each other, in on a sincere basis.
Yeah.
And you get none of that with Mattis or Miley or Pfizer or Biden or any of them. None of that. But when you find that, you just go, I want more of that.
Yeah.
I don't care what I got through to get that. I want more of that. I want to live like that. I want to be like them.
Yeah. There's a natural magnetic attraction where you're just like, this is fucking cool. Like, you don't need to be taught it. It doesn't matter. You can go through 20 years of indoctrination of being told being a man is bad. And when you go hang out, there's just, you're like, this is, you let a dog outside. You don't need to teach it to go sniff another dog's ass and go, you know, eat a rock. Like, it's just a dog. It's what it's going to do. There's something deep inside you, right? And you're like, you know, you just, you know, and I can only speak as a guy, but there's something you're like, oh, I want to be better at everything I do. I want to clean my apartment. I want to be more respectful. I want to be more honest. Like, yeah, that's there. You can't get rid of that. You absolutely cannot get rid of that. They're going to try, and as they have tried over the last 10,000 years, but they're not going to. They can't do it. I don't know. But, yeah. Well, yeah, I was going to say, when I was hanging out with Dale, they're doing like sharpshooting on these like distant targets. I couldn't hit anything. And finally, Dale was like, all right, you don't have to hit the little metal target. He was like, just hit that group of trees. And I was like, okay. And he's like, and you don't even need to use the rifle. And so I got a literal, like a mod deuce. And they're like, fully automatic, just hit the trees. And I hit the trees, and he's like, there you go. He's one of us. You know, thanks, good. Had like my little propeller hat on with ice cream. It's like, thanks for letting me be part of the team. Like, it was like a Make-A-Wish Foundation thing. It was like, I got to be one of the guys. The Dale's like, all right, yeah, you're a man. I'm like, thanks, Dale. I got the stamp of approval. I'm sure I left there, and he's like, Jesus Christ. But, yeah, Dale Comstock, what a machine. I love that guy. But, Mr. Prather, thank you so much, man. I always love talking to you. You always have fresh insight, and you have a rare ability that I think is genuinely difficult, is to not just be black-pilled and not just be blindly optimistic, but to take a sober observation of the horror around us and then explain it how God does win. And that's something I actually very much so appreciate about you. Anybody can sit around and talk about how bad something is, and anybody can stick their head in the sand and just say everything's peachy. It takes a real skill to wade through the shit and then show you how that's going to become like a field of flowers. And that's a skill that I will one day take from you and then not give you credit for. And but not kidding. But thank you so much. I will put your website. Guys, go check out a show, Prather Point, and yeah, man, I'd love to chat again sometime. Obviously, I don't know why I say that. Of course, we're gonna chat again sometime. What a weird sign off, Mr. Prather. Thank you so much, man.
Love to come back. You're doing great work. Keep it up. Proud of you.
Sir. Thank you, sir. God bless everybody. God does win. The demon pedophiles with myocarditis cannot win. They can't even run without falling over. So we got that for us. So with that, Mr. Prather, thank you.